Hello, I'm Jay Smith, Editor-in-Chief of Model Aviation Magazine and Park Pilot Magazine, and I'm here with Rich Hanson, who is the Director of Public Relations and Government Affairs. Hi, Rich.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Rich, in 2012, Congress passed the FAA Modernization and Reform Act, and then now in June of 2014, the FAA has released their interpretive rule for model aircraft. What is an interpretive rule and what does it mean?
Well, the interpretive rule is basically FAA's interpretation of the law that was passed in 2012 and how they intend to apply that law in regards to existing regulations. I think it's important to go back to the law that was written by Congress in 2012 and realize that it was actually their intention to carve out model aircraft activity that is being conducted within our organization, what they refer to as a community-based organization, and exempt that activity from regulation.
And why is it important that modeling enthusiasts get involved in this process?
Well, the interpretive rule effectively changes a lot of the intent that Congress had in the original rule. It actually, to a large extent, makes modelers subject to regulations that we've never been subject to before, and in the closing portion of the rule itself says that modelers will be subject to all the regulations in the Code of Federal Regulations that relate to aircraft. And this particular aspect of it is just not reasonable or is it practical from a standpoint of how the hobby is operated.
Okay. What specific points should we be concerned about?
Well, in their interpretive rule, they go through several regulations that model aircraft operators will be subject to, again, that they've not been subject to in the past, and they speak to operations in with particular types of airspace. They speak to meeting requirements that manned aircraft have been required to operate in that airspace, and to an extent would actually create a prohibition from operating in certain types of airspace. As we all know, the industry is an important part of this hobby, and the hobby wouldn't exist without that. And the very narrow definition that they have put in here for hobby and recreation really puts in question whether or not manufacturers, distributors, and even sponsored pilots could continue to operate under the model aircraft rules.
And is it also FPV involved in this?
Well, FPV is an aspect of this in that the FAA has actually targeted a specific modeling activity, and through its interpretation of the law has prohibited certain types of equipment technology used in FPV.
So what can viewers do today to have their voice heard on this important issue?
Well, I think it's important to know that when this was published in the Federal Register, the FAA established a 30-day comment period by which modelers, model aviation enthusiasts, anybody that's interested in this issue can make comment to the FAA, and they'll use those comments to clarify their interpretation and hopefully rectify some issues. So it's very important that our modelers and everyone interested in this issue participate in that comment period and make their concerns and their suggestions known.
So how would a viewer go about making a comment?
Well, the interpretive rule allows for 3 or 4 different ways of making comments. The one that's most prevalent and probably the preferred is that you go to regulation.gov and search for model aircraft. This will bring up a entrance screen where you can type in your comments and submit those to the FAA. They also allow written comments to be mailed in and faxed in as well.
Rich, thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to us about this important issue.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching. I'm Jay Smith with the AMA and Model Aviation Magazine.